The city glittered below like diamonds scattered on black velvet, but David Okonkwo didn't smile. He stood at the edge of his penthouse balcony, 34 floors up, dressed in his signature black tailored suit, a crystal glass of champagne untouched in his hand. His phone buzzed with messages. Congratulations, contract renewals, flirtations masked as birthday wishes. He ignored them all. Inside, the party was in full swing. Women in shimmering gowns laughed too loud. Men in agbadas whispered his name like a prayer. Champagne towers sparkled, flashbulbs popped, music pounded. But no one looked at him, only what he could give. A woman with perfect curls leaned in close. "Happy birthday, Mr. Okonkwo," she purred, running a finger down his chest. He barely looked at her. "Excuse me." Moments later, the party blurred behind glass as he entered his study. Quiet, cold, untouched by the celebration. Toby was already there, slouched on the couch, drink in hand. He didn't look surprised. "You disappeared early," Toby said. David loosened his collar and poured himself a drink he wouldn't finish. "I sealed a $1 billion deal today," he said flatly. Toby raised his glass. "Congratulations." David didn't smile. He sat. The silence between them was heavy. Then he spoke. Slowly, quietly. "I have money. I have power. But I don't have peace or love or anyone who'd love me if I lost all this tomorrow." Toby stared at him. No sarcasm. No jokes. Just a sigh. "You're a man that is admired by many. Love shouldn't be hard for you. Yet here I am. I wish it were that simple. No one here wants me for me. They just want in my money. Funny enough, my cousin tried something wild. Pretended to be broke. No cars, no staff, nothing. Just vibes. Ended up meeting a girl who didn't care who he was. She married him a year later." David leaned forward, the light catching the shadows under his eyes. "I want that. Help me do it." And for the first time that night, he looked alive. By sunrise, the suit was gone. Toby and David's personal assistant, Zecora, stood silently as David sat in the private salon tucked inside his mansion. The gold-framed mirror reflected a man about to disappear. The barber buzzed down his perfectly cropped fade. David didn't flinch. Zecora stepped forward holding a small case. Inside, a plain Nokia torchlight phone, faded jeans with a tear at the knee, a tattered Arsenal jersey, and a brown envelope of old transport cards. "You sure about this, sir?" she asked gently. David looked at her reflection. "If I can't find truth like this, then I never will." Later that day, he stood in the center of a cluttered one-room apartment in a J, mosquito net dangling off one hook, rusted fan humming in protest. The scent of kerosene and pepper soup from a neighbor's stove seeped through the cracked wall. His Rolex had been replaced with a blue rubber wristband. His cologne traded for the scent of sweat and dust. Zecora handed him a printed document. "Your new name is Dare. Dare Akinle. Age 34. Spent 7 years in Kirikiri for a fraud you didn't commit. Released on a technicality. No job. No family." David studied it. "Where do I say I sleep when I can't afford rent?" Toby leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Moshalashi, or under the bridge, whichever sounds more pitiful." Silence. Then Toby pushed off the wall and faced him squarely. "David, this won't be easy. People will spit on you, mock you, forget you're human." David's jaw tightened. "No hesitation, no drama." "That's exactly what I need to see." The sun beat down on the bustling Lagos market, casting long shadows on concrete and corrugated roofs. Voices layered over each other, sellers shouting prices, buyers haggling, buses honking in the distance. The air smelled of pepper, fish, and diesel. David, now dairy, stood silently beside a bread kiosk. His shirt clung to his back, his slippers flapped with every step, his throat burned with thirst, his stomach hollow. He'd been pushed aside 3 times already, first by a woman carrying a baby, then by a Danfo conductor who barked, "Oga shift jor!" and finally by a little boy who knocked into him with a basin of oranges. Still, he stood. He didn't beg. He couldn't. He just stared at the soft rolls stacked behind the glass. Then, like a quiet breeze, she appeared. Small, swift steps, a lightness to her walk despite the tired slump in her shoulders. Meera. She wore a dirty workout slippers, her toes dusted white from the road, a red wrapper tied over old leggings, her blouse loose at the neck. On her head, a silver tray balanced roasted ground nuts in small nylons. She should have looked ordinary, but she didn't. Her eyes were too kind for that. Meera paused behind him in the queue, fanning herself with one hand. She noticed him, the way he didn't speak, the way he stared at the bread like it hurt to look at it. Something about him stirred a softness she didn't have the luxury for. But still, she acted. She stepped out of line, approached the kiosk window, and handed over N500. 2 loaves, she said. Her voice was quiet, almost shy. The seller gave her a confused look but obeyed. Meera turned, extended 1 loaf to him. You look hungry, she said, her voice barely louder than the market noise. You can have this. Derry blinked, startled. He didn't reach for it immediately. His hand trembled. Why would you do that? He asked, voice husky. Meera shrugged, avoiding his gaze. Because if it were me starving, I'd want someone to help too. He finally took the bread, cradling it like it was something sacred. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then she walked to the nearest shaded sidewalk and sat on a low cement ledge, placing her tray beside her. She didn't look back, but something in her told her he would follow. He did. They sat side by side, breaking the bread in silence. The market noise faded into the background. Thank you, he said after a long pause. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Meera nodded, tearing another piece with her fingers. It happens. Too often. What's your name? Meera. He repeated it softly, like a prayer. Meera. There was a pause. Then, almost reluctantly, she started to speak. I sell groundnuts. Help my aunt at the house. My mom, she died 2 years ago. Fire took our house. My siblings were still toddlers. I had to grow up fast. Derry turned to look at her. She was still staring ahead, expression flat, like someone too used to struggle to complain. She smiled faintly. Sometimes I just want to escape, go somewhere quiet with people who are kind. He didn't say much, just listened and fell, not in the loud, dramatic way, but in the slow, irreversible way, like rain soaking into cracked earth. As she stood to leave, adjusting her tray, she looked at him once more. You didn't ask for bread. That's how I knew you needed it. He stood too. I'm Derry. She tilted her head. Well, Derry, take care of yourself. Then she was gone, disappearing back into the crowd like a warm dream. But her name stayed with him. Meera. The first person in years who'd seen him, without seeing what he owned. The sun had mellowed into gold. Smoke curled from roadside grills, mingling with the scent of fried yam and pepper stew. Derry, David in disguise, sat at the edge of a rundown buka, hunched over a plate of plain rice he'd barely touched. His eyes were distant, thoughts drifting back to the girl who gave him bread. He hadn't stopped thinking about her. And then, Meera, someone called across the road. She turned. He blinked. It was her. Meera. She was weaving through the crowd with that same determined gait, tomato-stained apron tied around her waist, groundnut tray tucked under one arm. Her forehead glistened with sweat, but her smile, wide and relieved, cut through the noise like sunlight. You again? She called as she reached him. Are you okay? He stood, startled by her urgency. I'm fine, he replied, voice lower than usual. You disappeared. She crossed her arms. I kept checking that kiosk for days. He blinked, surprised. You were looking for me? Well, she looked away, suddenly shy. Not like that. I hoped you were okay. He smiled, heart thudding louder than it should. I've been sorting some things. Meera raised a brow. If those things are your life, I hope they're sorting themselves out quickly. He laughed softly, a genuine sound that startled him. He couldn't remember the last time something had made him laugh. They sat at the low wooden bench by the stall. She set down her tray and offered him a bottle of cold water she'd just bought. They talked. Meera told him about her siblings, Simi and David, and how they still woke up crying some nights, asking for their mother. She talked about her jobs, selling groundnuts during the day, cleaning offices at night, how she barely made N3,000 a week, and how most of it vanished into bills. She smiled despite it all. You know, my best friend Linda, she works at this big hotel in Lekki. She's always telling me about the fancy food, the chandeliers, the music. One day I'll wear a dress and just walk in like I belong. He stared at her, the way she dreamed out loud, as if the world hadn't already tried to crush that voice. Just as he was about to say something, a harsh voice cut through the air. Meera! They both turned. A large woman in a green ankara gown stormed toward them, weaving through passersby like a hawk diving for prey. Meera's posture tensed. She stood. Auntie, please. But the woman didn't let her speak. So, this is where you've been, eh? Sitting with a dirty beggar? Is this what you want for your life, Meera? Shame on you. People started to look. Derry stood slowly, his fists clenched. The word beggar rang louder in his chest than any insult ever had. Meera tried to speak. He's not. Her aunt raised her hand and slap! A hot, vicious crack against Meera's cheek. The market gasped. The tray of groundnuts toppled. Several packs rolled into the dirt. Derry moved. He took one step forward, eyes blazing, his voice low but charged. Don't you dare touch her again. The aunt turned, scandalized. Who are you to speak to me? You don't even have shoes on your feet. Derry's jaw tightened. His entire body tensed, ready to unleash something terrifying. But then, Meera placed a trembling hand on his wrist. No. Her voice shook. Don't. She's not worth it. Their eyes met. His, burning with protectiveness. Hers, swimming with unshed tears. She turned, picked up her spilled groundnuts with trembling fingers, and walked away beside her aunt, face red and wet, dignity shattered. Derry watched her go, powerless for the first time in a long time, and somewhere deep inside something solidified. She deserves better. She deserves everything. The market had become their rhythm. Every morning, Derry showed up, always before sunrise, always waiting near her stall, already holding the basket she used to carry tomatoes and groundnuts. At first, Meera laughed. You don't even have shoes, but you wanted to be my assistant? He grinned. Shoes don't lift baskets, arms do. She tried to ignore how that made her smile. Day by day, he became part of her world. When it rained and other traders scrambled for shelter, Derry would yank off his thin shirt and hold it over her head like a shield. Meera would scold him, call him crazy. But inside, her chest ached, in the good way. When she had no sales, he'd somehow find enough coins to buy small loaves of bread for her younger siblings. When her customers yelled or cheated her, he'd slip in a joke and have her laughing again in seconds. He listened when she ranted about her aunt. He helped her restock when her tray broke. He swept the stall when she was too tired to move. And one afternoon, when her period surprised her and she froze in public shame, he disappeared, only to return with tissue, painkillers, and a dark scarf she could tie around her waist. He didn't speak, just handed it all to her, eyes turned respectfully away. Later that night, sitting under a flickering streetlight outside her compound, she looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. You, she said, are the kindest broke man I've ever met. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Not sure if that's a compliment or a warning. She nudged his arm with hers. Definitely a compliment. They fell into a silence that felt almost sacred. The hum of distant generators, the low chatter of neighbors, the stars blinking faintly above Lagos haze. Meera turned to him again. Her voice was softer now. You have the eyes of someone who used to have everything and lost it. His smile faltered. She didn't press, just waited. He looked at her, this barefoot market girl with hands rough from work but eyes full of light, and nearly confessed, nearly said, you have no idea who I am. But instead, he reached for her hand gently. I didn't lose everything, he said. I found you. And for a moment, the city stilled. She didn't answer, just rested her head lightly on his shoulder. And David, sat in silence, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with wealth or power, and everything to do with her. It happened too fast. One moment, Meera and Derry were laughing near her stall, sharing puff puff from a newspaper wrap. The next, a black Benz screeched to a halt across the road. Out stepped Tunde, sharp jaw, sunshades on at 6 p.m., and a permanent smirk that always made Meera feel like dirt under his shoe. Meera, he drawled, loud enough for the whole market to hear. So this is what you've become? Hawking tomatoes and spreading legs for beggars? The words hit like a slap. Meera froze. Derry turned sharply. But before he could speak, Tunde pointed at him, laughing cruelly. See this one. Who even owns you, Abeg? You dey follow my leftover with your gutter hands. Your slippers alone are an insult to this street. The crowd began to form. Meera's cheeks burned, but her voice stayed steady. You can insult me. You always have. But don't insult someone who has more humanity in one finger than you'll ever have. Tunde blinked. Meera, she stepped forward. Yes, I'm poor, but at least I don't stink of entitlement. I'd rather sit in the mud with someone who sees me than rot in gold with someone who never did. The crowd gasped. Even Derry looked stunned. Tunde hissed and stormed off, but the words had already spread like wildfire. By the time Meera got home, her aunt was waiting at the door with a broom. So you've been opening your legs for all Majiris? She screamed. Meera tried to explain, but the slap came too fast. Then another, then the broom. You disgrace me in public with a beggar. Meera? Is that how your mother raised you before she died? Meera ran inside, trembling. Her siblings watched from the corner, wide-eyed, terrified. She curled up on the mat that night, her back sore, eyes hot. But her heart? Her heart was silent. Elsewhere, Derry sat on the edge of the gutter outside her house, fists clenched. He had heard everything, the slurs, the beatings, her cry. He couldn't take it anymore. Next morning, he stood in front of the penthouse mirror, clean-shaven, hair cut low, Rolex ticking. A navy blue Tom Ford suit hugged his broad shoulders like a second skin. The world's most expensive cologne clung to his neck. Zecora stood nearby, watching silently. "You're sure?" she asked. David didn't answer. He slipped on his ring, picked up his phone. "Toby," he said, "tell them I'm coming back, and tell the driver to prepare the rolls." He paused, eyes darkening. "And Zecora?" "Yes, sir. Find Meera. Tell her she's invited to the most exclusive fundraiser in Lagos, and tell her the man she gave bread to hasn't stopped thinking about her. I beg, Meera, I need you." Fola's voice was already desperate over the phone. "One of our girls didn't show up for the fundraiser shift tonight. If you come now, you'll get paid, and there's free food." Meera hesitated, cradling her sore ribs. "Fola, I don't even have shoes. Borrow mine. I have an old dress. Just wear it. Enter through the back and carry the wine tray. That's all." 2 hours later, Meera stood at the back of the Nirvana Palace Hotel, dressed in Fola's pale lilac gown, simple, slightly faded, but the most elegant thing she'd ever worn. Her hair was in a loose bun. Her feet ached in flats 2 sizes too small. But her eyes, they widened in awe as she stepped into the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers spilled light like stars. Waiters glided between silk and tuxedos. The air was laced with French perfume, soft jazz, and the kind of laughter Meera had only heard on TV. She gripped her tray of champagne flutes tightly. Fola nudged her from behind. "Head high. Pretend you belong." Meera nodded. But then the lights dimmed. The MC took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we welcome an icon, a visionary, a man whose investments have reshaped half of West Africa." A hush fell over the crowd. "Please rise for the arrival of the elusive, the powerful, Mr. Kelechi Daramola." Applause exploded. Camera flashes lit the air. Meera turned slowly, and the tray in her hands tilted. Because there he was, stepping through the grand doors like he owned the building, tall, regal in a black tuxedo, beard perfectly trimmed, hair slicked back. His eyes scanned the room with that same calm gravity, same mouth, same cheekbones, same voice when he greeted the hosts. It was him, Derry. Only now he wasn't dusty, he wasn't hungry, he was power in human form. Meera gripped her tray tighter, pulse racing. The room went quiet as Kelechi took the podium. His deep voice echoed through the speakers. Calm, clear, measured. "A few months ago," he began, "I went missing. Light chuckles, whispers. I didn't tell anyone, not my board, not the press, not even my mother." He paused, looked down, then up again. "I went undercover, into the streets of Lagos. No money, no name, no security. I wanted to see this city for what it really was." Meera's heart slammed against her chest. Kelechi's eyes swept the room, then landed on her. "I saw beauty, and I saw horror. People laughed at me, stole from me, pushed me aside like I wasn't human." A beat of silence, but one girl, one changed everything. The air shifted. "She gave me her last N500 for bread. And then she walked away like it meant nothing. No expectations. No name. No pity." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Meera's hands trembled. "That girl is here tonight," Kelechi said softly. "Meera, come forward." All eyes turned. Meera shook her head, backing up. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." But Fola gave her a gentle push. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she stepped into the light, her flats echoing loudly on the polished floor. She tripped on the last step, almost fell. But Kelechi caught her. Their eyes locked. "Hi, Meera," he whispered. She stared up at him, voice cracking. "You lied to me. I know, and I'm sorry." He turned back to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's fundraiser will now sponsor 10 community girls like Meera, not because she's poor, but because she showed me what real wealth looks like." Thunderous applause. But Meera, she could barely breathe, not because of the stage or the lights, but because her heart, foolish, traitorous heart, still wanted to believe him. The fundraiser had long ended. Most guests had gone. Meera remained, standing alone on the rooftop terrace overlooking the Lagos skyline, still reeling. The air smelled of salt and luxury perfume. Somewhere in the distance, jazz music still hummed. She turned at the sound of footsteps. Kelechi stood there, no security, no cameras, just him in his tux jacket, now loosened, the tie undone. The billionaire stripped down to something closer to himself. "Meera," he said softly. She swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I couldn't. Not yet. I had to know who I was without the world watching, without the name, the money, the lies." She looked away. "And what did you find?" He stepped closer. "You." Mira's breath hitched. "You saw a man, not a beggar. You didn't pity me. You didn't expect anything. You gave your last and walked away." He paused, voice low. "That told me everything I needed to know." She blinked fast. "So what now?" Kelechi reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim envelope. "A contract," he said. "A job as my personal advisor for the Daramola Foundation. It's new, focused on real community development. You'll help lead it." Her lips parted. "That's insane." He smiled. "So is giving your last N500 to a stranger." He took out a small card next. "And this, your new address. It's a modest apartment close to your sibling's school. You'll have a driver, groceries, safety." Meera looked down at the card like it might catch fire in her hands. "And," Kelechi added, voice softening, "if you'll allow me, dinner. Just you and me, not as your boss." He held her gaze. "As the man who hasn't stopped thinking about you since the day you handed him bread." Meera didn't know whether to cry or faint. Things moved fast after that night. Meera started her new job, mostly behind the scenes at first. Training, shadowing, listening, learning. She wore simple but elegant clothes now, ate real meals, smiled more. Her siblings beamed every time they saw her drive her at school gates. But happiness, it never comes without a test. The Daramola Gala for women's education was a grand affair. Celebrities, press, foreign dignitaries. Meera stood quietly in the corner, clipboard in hand, helping coordinate vendors. She didn't expect Kelechi to find her there. And she certainly didn't expect Omotola to arrive. The woman was stunning, 6-inch heels, a diamond choker, and the kind of confidence that came from growing up inside wealth. She sauntered over like a queen approaching a peasant. "Oh," Omotola said with a razor-sharp smile, "you must be the little bread girl." Meera blinked, confused. "I mean," she continued, loud enough for surrounding guests to hear, "it's adorable, really. A real-life My Fair Lady. Or is it Pretty Woman?" Whispers began. "I'm sure this is just a game for you, darling. Rags to riches, sparkly parties, men who save you." She leaned in closer, eyes cruel. "Enjoy it while it lasts. These men, they always come home." Mira's chest tightened, her hands shook, but she held her tongue, until Omotola added, "Honestly, Kelechi's always had a soft spot for stray dogs." Laughter. Meera stood frozen. Fola ran over too late. "Let's go. You don't need this." Eyes stinging, Meera turned and walked out into the cool Lagos night, tears trailing silently. Somewhere behind her, the elite clinked glasses and toasted to women's empowerment. The gala had ended in gold and laughter. But Meera walked alone, back to the place where it all began. The cramped alleyway behind her aunt's house. Her old bench sat beneath the mango tree, faded and cracked. She sat there in her gala dress, now dusty at the hem. The silence of the neighborhood wrapped around her, children's cries in the distance, a generator humming, the scent of burning firewood. She clutched her bag, considered tossing the keycard inside. Maybe this wasn't her world. Maybe she didn't belong. Then, footsteps. Meera turned, startled. Kelechi stood there, not in a suit, not in designer shoes, but in jeans, a plain black shirt, sandals, no security, no spotlight, just him. "I thought you'd come here," he said softly, walking over. She didn't speak. He sat beside her on the bench, their shoulders nearly touching. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that said more than words. Then he said, "I didn't fall for your background." She looked at him, throat tight. "I fell for your spirit." A pause. "You don't have to prove anything, Meera. Not to me. Not to anyone. You were enough the day I met you, barefoot in that market." Her eyes burned. And then, finally, she broke. Tears slid down her cheeks as she let herself lean into him. Not as a savior, but as a man who saw her. He didn't touch her face, didn't try to fix it. He just let their hands brush, fingers curling softly together. And in the quiet of the night, on that dusty bench, a silent promise was made. Whatever comes next, we choose it. Together. 6 months later. The children's shelter was painted in bright colors, murals of butterflies and stars. Laughter echoed from the courtyard, where volunteers handed out books and snacks. Meera stood by the ribbon, clipboard in hand, dressed in a soft yellow dress and sneakers, hair natural, smile effortless. She didn't see it coming. Not until the crowd gasped. She turned, and Kalechi was kneeling. Before everyone, in jeans and a blazer, holding a small velvet box, and beside it, a card. She stared, heart hammering. He read aloud, voice thick with emotion. You paid N500 for a stranger's bread. Now I want to give you the world. Will you marry me? The courtyard erupted. Children screamed in joy. Guests clapped. Staff wiped tears. Meera? She covered her mouth, laughing and crying at once, then nodded. Kalechi slid the ring on her finger. Not the biggest stone, but it fit perfectly. He stood. She threw her arms around his neck, and just like that, the girl who once had nothing but a kind heart became the woman everyone envied. Moral of the story: kindness is a seed. You never know when it will bloom into a miracle. Have you ever helped a stranger and had it come back to bless you? Tell us in the comments. If you love this Cinderella-style twist of fate and love, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell for more breathtaking African folktale stories.